possible to mute your channel so we just have a little less? So Stever, Gary, Ruby, I gotta flip this so I can see everybody that's in there. There we go. Tate, Stever, Gary, Ruby, Jade. Yeah, everybody's there? Hey,
Yeah.
cool. Welcome to my home studio where I have skylights above the drums. So unfortunately, we get this wild kind of glare off of these brand new Zelgin cymbals, which were the last cymbals to be picked by an artist at the factory before COVID-19. Luckily, I was the only one in the factory. The next day, they closed the factory. So I just barely got in under the wire. So I made a list of things that I want to talk about in drum set styles today. It's based off of my, I guess, how old am I now? 25 years of teaching. So some of it is kind of my standard curriculum that I've used at different schools that I teach at. But most of all, everything that I'm going to talk about has come from my own insatiable discovery of music, constantly trying to find how all of these different rhythms work in very specific environments. So I'm going to start with something that is very basic that can be applied to any style, and this is more of a practicing method. It's a matrix where we're going to take any style of drumming, any style of playing music, and we're going to break it into 3 categories: slow, medium, and fast. So try and picture that in your mind or write it down. I actually have this little matrix written down on pieces of paper in my studio. But it's literally slow, medium, fast, and then underneath that, piano, mezzo forte, and forte. So again, this is just beginning as we get into talking about all different drum set styles. That's a matrix that I apply to everything that I'm working on if I'm practicing at home. I think everyone in the room can agree that there's certain things that we play on the drums that feel really good at one tempo, and if you go to a concert or if you're playing with others and you're asked to play a little bit faster or a little bit slower, sometimes it can get kind of weird, right? So just always keep it in the back of our head with all the different styles that we're learning. Eventually, we're going to want to break off and be able to play those rhythms fast, slow, very soft, very loud. We're going to have some back and forth. I'd love it if you guys chime in with questions and things as we go. But my first question is, where would be a place that you would really, you are required to play loud? What type of performing environment do you need to be in shape to play really loud? Does anybody have an idea? No? Tate, are they able to unmute and talk back to me, or do I need to unmute them?
They can unmute.
Okay. Oh, cool. Jade says big band. I'm going to pull up the chat. I'm sorry, I didn't see that was going on. Yeah. In a metal or rock band, Gary, absolutely. A big band would be definitely on the lower end of playing loud. You're right, Jade. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's only during like a few shout choruses on a couple of tunes on the gig. Big bands are oftentimes a small group, more than 50% of the time because you're playing under soloists. If you're in a metal or a rock band, absolutely. I was thinking more like in the venue. There are certain venues. There you go, Tate. Larger venue, Knuckleheads, Kaufman. I was even thinking Sprint Center. I'm thinking like legit big places. Now, if you are all drummers like me and you have been dreaming big your whole life to play on big stages, believe that you're going to play at the Kaufman Center someday. We're not just waiting for those big opportunities. Some of those things will happen for us if we're looking for it. So physically being able to play loud is part of the job in specific environments. Obviously, playing very soft would be more in a jazz classical or even pit orchestra deal. So we're going to come back to that slow, medium, fast, piano, mezzo, forte, forte, or soft, medium, and loud. What that matrix does, guys, is if we have slow, medium, and loud, let's say we take medium, and we're going to try and play a medium tempo at piano, a medium tempo at forte. Do you understand what I'm saying? We're going to cross those lines and try every which way we possibly can. So here we go, getting into drum set styles. The drum set was assembled in America in the early 1900s, and it is the combination of different instruments that came from immigrants that moved to America. So you got to have a little bit of history going into all these different drum set styles. I prefer to use Zelgin cymbals. Zelgin is a cymbal company that started in Turkey by Avidis Zelgin. Avidis was not Turkish. And so when he was in that area and he was first learning how to create the cymbal, when they were trying to make gold, they were mixing, they were alchemists, they were mixing different metals together, and they came up with this 80% copper, 20% tin, or is their alloy. Well, it turned out to make sound, and the Sultan hired Avidis to go and do that. Well, when Avidis was there, he was discriminated against because he wasn't native to the land. I'm mentioning that because the Zelgin company in America has always strived to be non-discriminatory, and it's one of the best companies. So the cymbal came from Turkey, but we also had Chinese cymbals coming from Chinese immigrants, and tom-toms from Chinese tom-toms. Then we had the marching bass drum that William F. Ludwig in 1909 created, the bass drum pedal, that contraption. And then the snare drum, which also came from the military. The hi-hat was primarily invented, and it being up high like this thanks to Papa Joe Jones and Avidis Zelgin. The Zelgin company and Papa Joe Jones got our hi-hat going. So that's what our instrument is. When I first began with any student, the first thing I'm going to learn is a rock beat. I think most of us can agree that might have been the first thing we learned. For me, it was literally that beat alone has made me more money than any other beat I have ever played in my entire life. And I would not have expected that when I was 8 years old playing that beat with my dad's blues band. But that's an important beat. So let's just start there. We're going to get into swing and Afro-Cuban rhythms and odd meter. We'll get into a bunch of fun stuff, but just starting with this, some of you are maybe beginning playing drums. Some of you are very advanced and may end up being educators at some point. One thing we want to notice is that 4-on-the-floor bass drum lining up with the snare drum can sometimes be tricky for a beginner. Right? Where it doesn't quite line up. And then later on in life, when we get really accomplished at these rhythms, we're going to purposely put that snare drum late to get like swag beats, like Jay Dilla beats. Jay Dilla was a producer, and he created beats that he moved the snare drums a little bit. He moved the bass drums a little bit. So that's more hip-hop stuff we'll talk about later. But this rhythm right now, I'm playing medium loud, medium tempo. When I'm playing different styles like this, where I have a couple different things going on, the right hand, the left hand, the bass drum, another exercise I'll do is I'll have students practice raising and lowering the volume of each individual part. You can do this with any rhythm. I'm going to demonstrate it with this simple 4-on-the-floor. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to really focus on the right hand. I'm going to experiment with the tip of the stick, the shaft of the stick, but I'm really focusing on. I'm going to bring it down. Now the snare drum. Bass drum. Now what's going to happen when we get into more complicated drum set rhythms is we're going to put too much attention on the instrument we're trying to make loud, and possibly the other parts will suffer. But again, this is kind of a foolproof way to check all of the styles that you're practicing and working on. So when you get to the gig or you're at the studio, I have often been in a recording studio where a song ended up needing to be moved up 20 clicks, so that the tempo moved it ended up being faster than I had practiced. And that's what the song needed in the studio. It's not about me. It's not about anybody's perfect plan. It was like, oh, wow, this song feels better when it's faster. I need to be prepared to do that. So by isolating the different parts, medium, loud, soft, medium, loud, and loud, piano, mezzo, forte, forte, and then also the slow, medium, fast. Take this same thing and fast. Now I have to change some technique. The right hand starts to, it's a throw, touch kind of thing. I'm not going to get completely into all these fundamentals. I'm so geeky, like, I love teaching all the fundamentals and techniques, but I want to make sure we don't get too far down that rabbit hole and get back to our style. So faster tempos like that with 4 on the floor obviously kind of harkens back to disco, and we might want to swing a little bit. We might want to take... Do you hear how it's got just a little bit of swing to it? That's an entire other dial of like flat, straight to almost swing, almost swing, almost swing, really swinging, all of a sudden dotted 8th to 16th note. Do you guys understand what I'm saying with that filter? Drum machines often have a swing dial on it that it can do it. So from this, did you hear how I did that, how I just changed that? In that little bit of changing the amount of swing were about 15 different drum set styles. And it's completely dependent on what the song is, what else is happening in the music, and making sure that that amount of swing fits what the other instruments are doing. So that's the beginning. That's kind of our basis of all of this. We're going to go to the ride cymbal, our swing pattern that most of us know. Obviously, if we're going to play swing, hi-hats on 2 and 4 to begin with. Can you guys write in the chat, how many of you learned this rhythm at some point in your life? Yeah? Did you guys learn that? And did anybody ever tell you to stop playing the bass drum? And maybe it was even confusing. For a lot of us, that's the rhythm we're taught when we first learn swing. And then at some point, a director, a teacher comes along and says, stop playing bass drum on all 4 beats. And then we're sitting there like, but that's not, I thought if I play the bass drum on all 4 beats like my teacher told me, now I know swing. Well, in the beginning stages of jazz, there was not amplified, there was no amplification. The tube, vacuum tube amplifier had not been invented yet, so we did not have amplified sound. So we had an upright bass player, oftentimes a sousaphone, to play the bass parts, and the bass drum would play 4 beats to the bar directly in time with the bass player or the tuba player, and that gave us what we call feathering the bass drum. So yeah, Gary, you're right on. Yes, certain settings and others, you know, sometimes you use it, sometimes you don't. What I'm going to challenge you with on the 4 beats to the bass drum, and this is hard to do virtually, but I can play the bass drum like, I'm playing that bass drum as soft as I possibly can, and it's not going to be heard in the concert. It's going to be felt and not heard. So that's one of the first things to work on in establishing a really good swing feel. I am a huge believer in the power of the quarter note, and so the stronger I feel that 4 on the floor with my bass drum, even when I'm not playing it, that's going to tie me in to the bass player and the common quarter note feel. So groove number 1, if we're starting with jazz, we'll get back to the rock stuff, is basic swing. Bass drum is going to be playing on all 4 beats, but as soft as we possibly can. And then the left hand is going to complement the soloist. It's going to accompany what's going on. In jazz, there's an entire vocabulary based on all of the musicians that have gone before us. So playing on the and of 1, the and of 2, the and of 3, the and of 4 is one of the hippest spots to play. 1, 2, 3 for 2, 3 for You're trying to avoid downbeats. That's where we start to understand the jazz vocabulary when it comes to rhythm. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the first spot where we really have to start thinking independently. So when my left hand is comping, the other stuff doesn't fall apart. I'm going to demonstrate that. It's not going to sound very good. It's like I'm having a conversation. It's like, my left hand says something. Oh, yeah, ride cymbal, keep going. My left hand says something. Oh, my right hand has to keep going. So these are things that with certain books we can develop further. As we go through this today, I'm going to be showing you some examples of what I use in my studio. This is one of my favorite books, just getting started with. It's possibly the most popular jazz drum set book currently. And what John Riley does at the very beginning when he teaches this, and for those of you that don't know, John Riley is the drummer with the Village Vanguard Orchestra. The Vanguard just closed, so I don't know I think they're still a band, but anyway. He starts off, and the very first exercises are comping examples. So this first example is bop, 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 1, 2, and 1, 2, and then we're going to practice that on the snare drum. Then I might try and practice it on the bass drum. Then I might try and move it around the drum set, and I'm just improvising over that rhythm. You get the picture. Just that to me is some of the most fruitful practicing I can do. Take a little idea that I've gotten from a book, take a concept, and then work it out over the drums as much as I possibly can, trying to move things around. So mediums, that's like a medium swing feel. In a college audition, for those of you that are in college, going to college, potentially thinking about that, you're going to be asked to play a variety of styles for your audition. So a medium swing. The next thing that I think has so much power is a swing shuffle. The swing shuffle, I refer to the recording of the great Art Blakey on drums, and the song is Moanin'. You might want to write that down. It's a swing shuffle. It's a Blakey style swing shuffle. And I'll tell you a quick story and how drum styles can sometimes be confusing. My father is a blues musician, so I grew up playing a blues shuffle. A decade before I ever played Ding Ding a Ding was that. So with a blues shuffle, blues is 90% of the time going to be guitar driven. Chun, 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 chun. It's going to be a little bit louder. So ba 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that's a really tricky thing that is very important for a swing shuffle. So I'm kind of dropping and then I'm whipping, rebounding with a Moeller technique to beat 2 and then dropping again. Now the way Blakey's going to do it, we're going to keep a swing feel in the ride cymbal. We're not going to play the shuffle thing. If you really dig blues music, guys, and you want to go straight down, like completely down the rabbit hole, there's really 3 primary styles. Texas shuffle, and that's Stevie Ray Vaughan, ZZ Top. Kansas City shuffle, which is way more jazz influenced, not so much heavy guitar, and then Chicago blues shuffle. And Chicago's kind of probably the deepest of those in contemporary popular music. But in jazz, Art Blakey, Monin. Now I can mess with that a little bit, and instead of making it really straight triplet based, ba 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 ba, instead of that I might want ba 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 ba. You see how I'm just stretching it a little bit? That's what makes it a little bit funkier. Now I need to choose to do that if I'm in a band with folks that's going to work with. You know, sometimes forcing these grooves into ensembles doesn't work. You know, I spent all week working on this groove, and then I go to my rehearsal and I try and play it on them, and they're like, "What are you doing?" So we always want to be mindful that when we're making music together, we're making music together. It's about the ensemble we're playing with. But I'm going to do that in the shuffle. Did you notice that my ride cymbal had to change? My ride cymbal had to start snapping. And that's just what makes that groove. So medium swing, shuffle. Now our next thing that I would ask in an audition is I would ask to hear, always been confused of what that is exactly, a KC shuffle. Yes, so Kansas City shuffle is definitely based on guys like Harold Jones and Philly, well, not Philly, who's the other cat that lived in Kansas City for a while? It's like Count Basie style shuffle. It's really where that came from. Harold was a drummer in the Basie band for a long time. So Chicago shuffle is going to be a little bigger. It's going to be more guitar based. I mean, the guitar players that came out of Chicago kind of brought that. So this is what'll help you, Jade. Next thing I'm going to do is go to fast swing, but let's stick on this to talk about the shuffle. So we start off, we have our swing shuffle that really is the Kansas City swing kind of thing. Like what Art is doing fits more into that. Chicago is going to be much more blues oriented, and then Texas is almost more like rock music, the way that goes. So the Kansas City shuffle, the guys that taught me, are you ready for something really weird? Class, are you ready for something weird? Okay, so I was on a gig with a very old elder statesman musician from New Orleans. And he turns around and he's like, "No, not a Chicago shuffle, Kansas City shuffle." And he starts dancing, and it was like, dun, 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 dun. You tighten up the ta-ta. You get those tighter. Texas is going to be really loose, more like a triplet. Da 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 da. Chicago is going to be kind of in between. Kansas City shuffle is tight like that. So how I learned Kansas City shuffle was literally this saxophone player dancing in front of me like he was doing a march. Now he's from New Orleans, so you know they march a lot there. But he was like, I'm playing, and he's like, no, and his body language, the way he danced to the rhythm, is really what taught me, and it opened my mind to how much bigger this music is than learning from a book. So any of us that want to learn more about very specific styles, if Kansas City shuffle is something you want to go even deeper with, I would look to the recordings, the early recordings of bands from Kansas City. And you can find all kinds of stuff at the American Jazz Museum website, or if you go down to the Blue Room. But early Basie records, that's when you start hearing, the early Basie records, when you start hearing the ride cymbal tighten up. So even if we're playing here. So that's a little bit more insight into the shuffle thing. And I'll warn you, a lot of people think that they are experts. So you might talk to a guitar player that really says, this is what it is. I feel like we have to be very careful because we were not alive when this music first started, when it first came about. And so for me as an educator and as a drummer, I'm on a lifelong quest to learn deeper on all of these accounts. So don't let, one person's opinion steer you into thinking that's the only truth there is. Chicago blues, one of my biggest inspirations is Buddy Guy. And with Buddy Guy as a guitarist, what I've studied in listening to him over the years is how the different drummers play with him. Because my thought is, why does Buddy Guy hire that drummer when he could have hired this other one? There's a chemistry when musicians play together that we can't understand. We can't even describe because it's between them, if as the listener. So that's one place to get a little more knowledge. Okay, so moving on, medium swing, shuffle, fast swing. With a fast swing, the quarter note is really important, and we want to make sure stylistically that we're not playing 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3. Do you see what I mean? Where I'm letting it bounce. 1. I'm just throwing the stick at the cymbal on 2 and 4, and it's bouncing. I did that as a young drummer because it was the only way I could keep up. And I thought I had to play ding, ding, a ding, ding, a ding all the time. That's not true. Quarter notes are beautiful. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. What I'm looking for, if this is an audition or if I'm a band leader and I'm auditioning drummers, and for those of you that I've not met before, I play equal amount guitar and bass in different projects, and I produce things at home. So I'm not just a drummer. When I'm looking at how drummers play these different styles, with fast swing in particular, it needs to sound consistent. We don't want the ride cymbal getting louder and softer. We want to make sure if we're going to play ding, ding, it's leading to the quarter note, so we hear ding, 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 ding. As a drummer, I have my own list of drummers in the back of my head that I want to emulate. The great Tony Williams ride cymbal sound is a great thing to study. Roy Haynes, flat ride. I mean, Roy Haynes, man, wow, so musical. But regardless of those things, time is the most important thing. Time always means the most. So if I'm going to ask you to play something really, really fast, some of you in our room right now might be a little uncomfortable at these faster tempos. It's because we haven't spent enough time living in that tempo. It's not just about, oh, well, Brandon, my right hand just isn't that fast. It's like, well, we need our minds to think that fast as well. It's not just the physical hand and arm strength. It's, am I able to hear in my head, boom, do, 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 go. Okay, so I just explained very quickly what I'm going to talk about in fast swing. Do, 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 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. We want to feel those longer durations underneath. We want to think, we're trying to sew together quarter notes that complete phrases. We're not playing 4 beats that then repeat. You see what I mean? It's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, it gets challenging there. We want to try and think in longer phrases. So fast swing, same deal. The bass drum is going to have a hard time keeping up if you're trying to play those downbeats. So that's a good chance to eliminate the bass drum and try and put more independence into the ride cymbal. But most importantly, we want ding, da, da, ding, ding, da, da, ding, da, da, ding, da, da, ding. We don't want. Do you see what I'm saying, guys? I'm literally having to da-da-ing, if you can see in my hand. Da-da, pull that third stroke out. It's all about the third stroke. So now I'm away from the drums. Someone in the house is on the telephone. I can't play loud. I'm going to have a pair of sticks, and I'm going to play on my leg or a pillow. da-da-da, 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 to work that up, okay? So fast swing. The most direct application of fast swing for my taste is drum and bass. So I'm going to totally skip over some of the other essential grooves. We're going to come back to it: bossa, samba, Afro-Cuban. Any questions as we're going along, post them in the comments or in the chat. Fast swing, ding-digga-ding, digga-ding, 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 to me resembles all the same traits as drum and bass. Drum and bass is a style of music that came out of Europe in 1994-ish. It's an electronic style of music that sits primarily at 170 to 178 beats per minute, and that's a very specific thing. So drum and bass, now we're playing the grooves that are played on the drum set for drum and bass are Motown, soul, funk, like funk and soul drum breaks from the 60s and 70s that then they sped up. So they took now the fast swing thing's going to come into play with my right hand, so I can play. That's a little bit more advanced, and I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I want to draw that correlation of fast swing to electronic music and playing straight eighth notes. There's really no swing at that tempo. So we got through all the swing stuff. Let's go to bossa. Bossa nova comes from Brazil. In the 60s, it means new sound. And it would have been played on guitar and pandeiro. This is my Brazilian tambourine. The pandeiro and the guitar would play kind of slow and soft. I'm getting a tone, and I'm rocking back and forth. And this little fella fits in every backpack I own. So every tour I've ever done for 20 years, or 15 years, I've had a pandeiro with me. So away from the drum set, I can learn another instrument, and over years, it becomes something I can actually play. But that bossa nova, the most standard version of the bossa nova is with our bass drum. 1 and 3 and 1 and 3 and 1 and 4, 1, 2, 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and I can do variations on that snare drum part, and I can learn different variations by listening to recordings. My favorite source for Brazilian drumming is traditional Brazilian drumming, not necessarily drum set players. I don't necessarily want to learn exactly what my friend Brian Stever plays, and then I go play it just like him because it's going to sound like I'm playing just like this other person. I want to try and find these new things that I have a relationship with. Listening to the records that will allow me a little bit more insight into the tradition of group drumming that then got put on the drum set. So to make that a little more clear, the Brazilian rhythms we play on drum set all come from group drumming experiences and styles, and then we apply what the group sounds like to then play on the drum set. The essence of Brazilian percussion and drum set is one of my favorite resources for this. And I'll use the tamborim. The tamborim is a very small little handheld drum that I should have close by here. Well, I can't find it right away. It's a very small drum, and it plays rhythms like what the snare drum is doing. Tak, 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 so now we have a basis to improvise the snare drum over that bossa nova bass drum hi-hat. Now, the most important thing in playing a bossa is that we do not draw attention to ourselves. The bossa groove, the way bossa nova feels, should be just as relaxed and enjoyable as sitting on the beach in Bahia. Like in Brazil, it's a very relaxed, kind of slower pace of life. The music needs to reflect that. So we don't want to take our drum and bass and our fast swing mentality into a bossa where we're like it kind of takes away from the vibe. So that's one thing that's hard for us sometimes as drummers to enjoy the bossa nova, because it feels like it's just kind of boring. It's like, well, no, it's not about the notes we're playing, it's about the groove that we're establishing. The next step in this progression is to move to samba. Samba music was actually created quite a bit earlier than bossa nova. And we're mimicking these large bass drums. Same thing in the feet. So your right foot is going to do that same thing, but with samba, we get quite a bit, we get more faster tempos, more theatrics. We can actually play quite a bit more stuff. So I'm going to teach you one samba thing just from like starter samba world. Our feet are going here, and we're going to play unison with our hands. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And so think of it like this. In Brazilian music, Afro-Cuban music, West African music, a lot of these different genres, we have these layers of a cake where the bottom layer is here. Now, if the next layer is going to be the snare drum thing I just played, I don't want to improvise that snare drum too much, or it's going to take away from the groove. So if I play, instead of playing my hands in unison, I'm going to let my right hand be like a shaker. Like in a traditional ensemble, there'd be a shaker. Now my ride cymbal fulfills that role. And I told you that we might get faster. In traditional settings, we might eliminate 1 and 3 in the bass drum. This means don't go don't go don't go don't go go don't go don't go don't. You see how I'm accenting 2 and 4? That's more what the traditional music sounds like, what samba sounds like. If you're super interested in this, I want you to write this word down right now. When we get done today, go Google it. Olodum, Olodum, Olodum. Maybe one of you guys could just type that into the chat. You'd probably be faster at it than me with the way I have my computer set up. Yeah, there you go. So Olodum is a group of musicians that have been together. I think they're the longest family of drummers playing traditional samba with roots in Bahia, where it first came out of samba de roda. Samba de roda came from the pandero and smaller drums, and then it got louder and they made bigger and bigger drums. But samba, where we're accenting 2 and 4, that might be a great thing to change up how we're playing different sections of a tune. So I'm going to show you what that sounds like. Right there, I went straight full on traditional. Traditional samba, there's a bunch of people playing snare drums called caixa, C-A-I-X-A. The caixa plays kind of sloppy. The drummers that were creating this music were not conservatory trained drummers. It was a club. The samba schools, the people that play samba music together, it's something to do after school and after work in the evening. In the same way, I have a lot of friends that are involved in sports. I'm involved in music, so I learned this music by playing with musicians in the evening. In Brazil, there's a huge tradition of samba, and we have people playing this. and you can hear how it's kind of like the great Doug Auerwater. Doug is one of the greatest educators in this area. And Doug talks about the sound of samba being like an egg rolling over. Daga 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 da. See what I mean? And then if I use my floor tom for 2 and 4, it's going to sound more like traditional music. Another musician that has taken Brazilian music quite a bit further into the jazz and funk world is Airto Moreira. Just type in Airto, Airto, and you'll find stuff on him. So now we've gotten through our swing styles, we've gotten bossa, we've gotten samba. I'm going to touch very briefly on brushes. Brushes, for a lot of jazz drummers, young jazz drummers, brushes are really the final frontier. In my experience, brushes are, it's the one thing nobody practices enough of. And then you get on a gig, and most of us learn, we get on a gig where we really are uncomfortable and it didn't feel good, and we go home after not feeling good with our brush playing, and we have a choice to make, to either continue trying to play this music and get better at it, or put down the brushes and just work on metal chops and odd meter, which is fine. I know I have a ton of friends that have they don't play brushes at all, but they can just slay on giant drum sets. So really quickly with brushes. There's a great section in John Riley's Art of Bop Drumming book, and I've encouraged all of my students for my entire career to photocopy the brush opening, the pages that have brush patterns on it, and put them up on the wall in your studio so you see it every day. It reminds you still have more to learn. If you're seeing that every time you sit down at the drums, you're going to eventually start to get some of that together. So beginning brushes 101, the left hand is going to circle. The right hand and the left hand are going to stay out of each other's way. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And then the next thing is to move my left hand closer to the drum and apply more pressure in different spots. Right there, I'm pressing down on every single quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my favorite swing brush sound, and it can be played a lot of different ways. It can even be... You see what I mean? There's a lot of different ways to do it, but hearing that pulse helps me hear the same. It's more akin to the ride cymbal. So that's brushes. Going into Afro-Cuban rhythms, we're running out of time. I hope this is being I hope this has been a good pace for you all, and that you're learning. But we're going to have to crunch some of these things I put at the end of the class, since we're getting close to the end. Again, questions, comments, anything about styles of music, artists, gear, type them in the chat. We're going to go to Cuba now. We're going to talk about Afro-Cuban music. We have till 1:55. Perfect. Oh, yeah, we got 9 minutes. So in Afro-Cuban music, we're talking about music that would have been created with a mixture of congas, bongo, timbales. The timbales were actually a set of timpani. If you didn't know this, have you guys ever been confused in school where it's like, well, which way do I turn? Which way do I set up the congas? Which way do I set up timbales? We know that most drum sets go high to low, and that timpani is backwards of that. That really confused me as a young drummer. Timpani go high from the right, low to the left. Same with timbales, because they were originally using a set of 2 timpani in Latin orchestras in Cuba. They were originally using timpani, and they were big and they were cumbersome, and so they chopped them in half and started making them smaller. And that's why in orchestral music and certain charts, the timpani part will actually say timbales at the top. So they come from the same family. Afro-Cuban music comes from those instruments. So again, we're taking parts that were originally, 3, 4 different people, and we're putting it on the drum set. The very first rhythm and the simplest rhythm to start with Afro-Cuban music is to put our bass drum on all 4 beats, a rim shot, cross stick on all 4 beats, and then 1/8 notes on the hi-hat, but we're going to buzz to get the guiro sound, the guiro, G-U-I-R-O, the guiro. Don't be afraid to pronounce things properly. It's embarrassing at first, but the better you get at it, the more respectful we are to the cultures that these instruments came from. So guiro. Espresso, not espresso. Espresso. Oh, that one drives me crazy. Some of my best friends just refuse to say it correctly. Okay, so this is called cha-cha-cha. So when I first start with a student, when I'm first working on this, we're just going to play. We got the bass drum going on all 4 beats. The snare drum is keeping that. And now I'm going to put the bass drum 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. And that's what a conga would be playing. So the congas, tick back, go goat, tick back, do goat, and 4 and. And now the right hand, we're going to buzz like this. And I'm trying to manage that bounce so it's done at the duration of the quarter note. You see what I'm saying? I'm giving it that full duration. The next rhythm that I should have in my arsenal is a mambo. The mambo is a pretty complicated rhythm with different parts, and there's not really a simple way to do it. We kind of have to have everything for it to be a mambo. The ride cymbal is going to play a bell pattern that would be played on a cowbell. And it would be dang, dang, tick, gang, tick, gang, tick, go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1. And then snare drum is doing the conga part. And I must tell you guys, if you were really expecting like super jazz sounding drums, my drum set in my studio right now is set up for like funk and rock stuff. I'm finishing a couple records this month that require these big fluga drums. So these are not the sounds that I would use in a jazz or an Afro-Cuban setting. I just noticed with it's like a floor tom in a jazz ensemble. So mambo, I'm going to add that bass drum back in. So one and 2 and 4. This is the complicated part we got to master as we delve into Afro-Cuban music. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and. Because that's what the bass player's doing. It's similar to the 4 on the floor and swing. 1, 2, boom, 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 boom. That's the bass player's part. So if he's going or she's going 1, 2, boom, boom, they're actually getting to the next chord on beat 4 instead of 1, 2, 2, 2, 1 and 2 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. They're getting to the new chord on beat 4. So now, stylistically, this means that we have to crash or do our fills to come down on beat 4. I'm gonna play just a little bit. We got a couple minutes. I'm gonna take the mambo. The next thing would be a songo, where we're playing 1, 2, and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But the bass drum's doing that, and then I'm gonna fill whenever I'm trying to mark the form. 1, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, blah, ga, boom, I'm going to try and crash on 4. So I'll just play a little bit with that to give you cha-cha, mambo, and sango. We've gotten through swing. We talked a little bit about rock and funk stuff at the beginning. We even got into drum and bass. We got to Afro-Cuban music. Stylistically, we could talk about odd meter, and the most important thing to begin would be a waltz, playing in 3. We can also use the waltz in jazz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Move the hi-hat around. Start with the hi-hat on 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then break out. I'm seeing a little thing telling me I got 50 seconds before our session is over. You guys know who I am. You can Google my name. My website comes up. My email and my cell phone numbers are on there. If you have any questions at any time about anything, send an email saying, hey, I was at that breakout group at the virtual jazz camp. I got this question. I will send you back. Like, I'm available. So let me know what questions you might have after this is all over with. If we didn't get to it today, we did not get into metronome displacement, but that's another thing for another time, and developing our sound on grooves. And I guess that's it. So thanks for being here. 10, 9, 8. 120 beats per minute, yo.